You are listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud, conversations about trauma and healing from two women who are doing the work.
Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Sher and I just recorded a whole episode that actually didn't get recorded. Sher, I don't think we've ever done that before, but that's okay because we just decided to hop right back on and pick up the topic that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, which is the topic of desire. We're going to wrap this series up today, and we are just going to share a few thoughts about what this has been like to be in this space of processing the topic of being wild women of desire out loud, and share, just what does it mean when we can hold desire with hope, with disappointment, when shame creeps up, when fear creeps up. There's just a lot that we have to work through when we are moving into connecting with our good desires.
Yeah. And I think the more we become aware of our body and the way that we feel sadness or anger or disappointment in our body, it can even in some ways be a harder struggle because we feel it more acutely. On the other hand, we're surrounded by people who are holding our desire with us many times. And so when we face disappointment, we also are having people who are navigating that space with us, maybe helping us recognize or redirect or offering us comfort in the disappointment, whatever it may be. So I know for myself, I'm experiencing moving toward desire differently than I ever have before in my life. I think just the fact that we've been in this space now for a couple of months, we kind of took the deep dive with our group, and then we've been sitting in it with a podcast. I think I'm just thinking about it a lot more, and I'm a lot more aware of what am I desiring and how am I handling it when I feel the disappointment in small things mostly, but just much more aware. And I think that it's been important. I think it's been really important for me at this point in my journey.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned that our last two episodes that went out, you had asked a question, and we both took turns answering that question with a lot of vulnerability, even making sure that we wanted to release those episodes. And we both agreed to. And one reason why we continue to say yes to this, I'm going to say calling, to process trauma out loud with the hope of healing and with the hope and desire of inviting other people to healing. And as we've processed this topic of desire, we've noticed that when we reconnect with our good desires, it also comes with, and I named it as kind of this sweet surrender and trust of the outcome.
Yeah.
Because if we can't hold that we may not see certain desires fulfilled, like if it feels fatal, of course we're going to shut desire down. It's too scary. But we really have found that in community, and you just talked about this, that, and I want to say this, if our deepest need is human connection, that we weep when one another weeps and we rejoice when one another rejoices, and you and I both believe that we were created for that, no matter what desire gets fulfilled or not, we have that foundational need being met of not being alone, not feeling forsaken, not having the fear of potential abandonment.
Yeah.
And so those things came from the years of healing that we have been in, from healing from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So we have been led to this place of being wild women of desire who are willing to risk. And I have to say, it feels pretty darn good.
Today. It can be pretty bad too. I mean,
Today. Good point.
yeah, 2 weeks ago on the podcast when we recorded, I did get pretty dysregulated. The question was about when have we moved toward desire, and then we ended up regretting that we did. And I shared just a little bit of a story that actually really brought some dysregulation and caused me to really notice, oh, there's something here that I want to take another look at. And so I've been doing a lot of journaling around that story. I did a couple of sessions with my coach about that. I've talked with you and some of the people in my community, and as a result of that, so that was a place where recognizing desire was brought pain, really. But going back into that and working through it, like I'm experiencing some more healing around that, which then that gives me the sense of, okay, I can move toward desire again because I made it through that. And that's where I think, and you're naming it, Kandace, but this healing journey is experiencing the healing as we go and having community. These two elements particularly help me feel more comfortable fanning the flames of desire that I am feeling in my life.
This came up for me as you were sharing this this idea that desire, for some reason I started connecting it to this desire to care for ourselves and to care for others, to hope for ourselves and to hope for others, to heal for ourselves and to heal for others. I'm just going to say, really kind of frustrated as I look back on my faith journey and realized I really have heard, I don't even know, maybe one sermon in my 55 years on what did Jesus mean when he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. And I really believe can be translated. This is what's just coming up for me. Desire good for your neighbor as you desire good for yourself. Because that's love. I want good for you and I want good for you. Now, where we have to, as we're healing from trauma and we are looking at all the nuances of our story and how we showed up in our family of origin and how we've gotten into reenactment patterns, and we have to have the eyes and ears of someone else. I'm going to say pretty much always to help us see these areas where desire has been maybe used against us or shut down or twisted. And as we have been in this space, you and I personally for years with one another and then our groups, we're finding that letting desire come back alive. And as you said, fanning the flames of desire, we're ready to take that risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking about too the struggle that we have within our own. How we feel desire in our body is different than how we think about desire in our mind.
Mm.
And how we feel disappointment in our body is different than how we process disappointment in our mind. And I've been just thinking about this a lot recently, about how a lot of times we do feel judgment, condemnation, shame from other people when we move toward desire and we end up in a place that we weren't expecting. But I also am recognizing that sometimes I heap a lot of judgment and condemnation upon myself.
Yeah.
That comes from my paradigms of, what I've been taught. I think a lot of times, but still, I think that we can bring a lot of that upon ourselves. And I'm starting to really recognize, like, I want to navigate those waters differently. Like when I feel this fragmentation between my body and my mind, which has been very real in my life, where there's detachment from my body and living more out of just what I am thinking. As I'm experiencing more healing in that area, I'm wanting to really become more aware of not always letting what I think be the most important thing.
Yeah.
How do I also give honor to what I feel? And when I feel led to go in a certain direction, my brain will immediately come up with 100 reasons why that's not a good idea, why maybe that's dangerous, or that's stupid, or that will never happen, and yet there's another part of me that I feel like, but I really want to try that, or I really want to go there, or I'm wanting to bring connection more to this fragmentation. I'm wanting to bring integration here, where I'm recognizing that there has been a lifetime of fragmentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and where there's a lifetime of fragmentation, there's patterns that develop. So
Right.
in that fragmentation, there are ways that we've created the neural pathway of how we will respond when our body and our brain are disconnected. And so I love this. I love this, Cher, because when we slow down and we have an awareness that our goal, and I'm just going to call it wholeness, where our body and our brain and our spirit are all congruent. This is a place of great authority and integrity, and having the potential to not only change our lives, but make an impact on those that we love and care about. And I think that's my journey too. I know that that's my journey too. Like, okay, my brain is kind of here. This is what's going on in my body. So let's just slow down and invite wisdom in, and trust that there is a story that our body is wanting us to listen to in those moments.
Yeah.
And that story could be, you feel this way, but it's actually connected to past trauma. And so knowing this, how do we want to maybe choose something different? Or it could be like this invitation to like go for it.
Well, yeah. That our body also holds wisdom, not just our brain, but our body holds wisdom and instinct and intuition. And so what does it mean? And I'm going to just say again, to not to just throw the brain or the mind out the window, but how do we find integration there, where we're not functioning only half of this wholeness of who we are.
Yeah. So good. I want to bring in this idea of desire and shame for just a second, because next week we are going to be kind of starting a new series around the topic of shame. But when we've had historically so much shame connected to, our desires, it really does take the eyes and ears of other people to help us, I want to say, disentangle those stories that caused us to shut down desire, fear desire, or I want to say this, or really having no boundaries around our desire. And when you've historically had, shame has been that close companion of desire. Oh my gosh, it's really life-changing when kindness enters into those stories and you're able to reconnect with your good desire and really see the shame pretty dismantled around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And amazing how that being held with another person, as you're saying in our story, with kindness, allowing their voice to come in to the story, and where we are really hearing a different perspective than the perspective that our brain has been holding. It enables us to open our realm of possibilities of what really happened there. Because again, we can come down on ourselves with harsh judgment, or when we are harshly judged by someone else, we can just agree and take that all on. But then when somebody comes alongside of us with eyes of compassion, eyes of understanding, because they see the whole context in a different light, and eyes of compassion, kindness, we can walk away from a half-hour conversation changed.
Oh,
Changed.
Yeah.
Freed from shame that has been suffocating us for maybe even decades.
Well, it can feel shocking, honestly. And
Yes, yeah.
and I'll just say, if my memoir is out, it's published with you now. You can get it on Amazon, but I tell a story in there that my story work coach renamed me. I was so set, like very set in how I saw my teenage girl. Okay. Like in my mind, Sher, there was no other way to see her in the way that I was seeing her at that time. So when my story coach renamed her and she just used one word that was different than the word I used, I literally felt shocked. My whole system, like, I mean, if you could have seen my internal world, it would have been blinking and flashing and like, alarms going off because of this. The kindness in which she did that in I had to say, wait a minute, don't tease me like this. Don't joke with me about this, because if you're right and you see that teenage girl better than I see her, this will change everything for me. And it did.
And it did. Oh, love that so much.
And you and I have done this with our own clients at times, right? And to have the privilege and the absolute honor that women would allow us up close to their littles, their teenagers, for us to have eyes of love and compassion and kindness and wisdom. I mean, truly, I want to do this until the day I die.
Yeah. Oh. And I will say, Kandace, and you and I haven't even talked about this, but I had a renaming happen last week through a text thread where something was renamed for me. And I literally, when I read the text, I literally gasped, like, could it be?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be? And this is what renaming does. And this is a work. We cannot rename ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We can't. Our brain literally only can see it the way that it sees it. Mm-hmm. And this is where we need people who know how to help.
Yes.
We talked about
Yeah, speaking of people who know how to help, as we wrap up this series on Wild Women of Desire, one of those people is Adam Young. And I woke up this morning, made my coffee, and opened up his book called Making Sense of Your Story: Why Engaging Your Past with Kindness Changes Everything. I desire, share, that our listeners would read his book and listen to his podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves In. We have great honor and respect for Adam because we both cut our teeth on understanding childhood trauma and the invitation to really heal. And so I just want to mention, I have a book out. I love my book. I want it to help other people, but I'm even going to say, order Adam's book first.
I'll say order both of them.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. No, I love that. And yes, we have been the recipients of many people that have known how to help us on this journey. And we are so grateful, and grateful now that we're doing the work also, with the podcast and with our clients, and in our relationships, that we know how to help people navigate these waters in ways that make a difference in their lives. And it is such an honor.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Well, let's end this series on Wild Women of Desire with the caveat we can talk about desire whenever we want. But it's,
And I think,
go ahead. Yeah,
I think it's going to come up more and more.
Yes, I do too. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to get away from it. But yeah, so friend, so good to be with you. And I look forward to moving into our episode next week on the topic of shame. And I just love you so much.
Love you too, Kandace.